be tenacious, but be patient, because as you can overwork yourself, and you have to make sense of it. What is your goal? Have a plan. I would say I had my short-term goals, I had my long-term goals, I had some that were very unrealistic. So just be mindful of that. That there are certain things you may not get to as soon as you think. And if you don't get it done, it's not the end of the world. Just know that there are certain things you're going to get done a lot sooner than you think, and some things you're not. And so, but always with the goal in mind that you want to become a better artist.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold. Brush. My name is Laura Orengo-Bear, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. Our guest today is Otto Sturcke, an artist based in Southern California whose work focuses on creating allegorical narratives reminiscent of the Dutch masters, albeit with a discerning nod to his own culture and lived experiences during his life. We discuss his time in the military and how it influenced both his work and his daily routine, how he tenaciously took any job and did everything he could to turn his dream of becoming a full-time artist into a reality, why human connection can take your work and marketing skills to a whole new level, and he reminds us of the importance of writing down your goals and making a plan so you can stay on track and become a better artist. Finally, he tells us about his awesome board game called Mad Monster Bash and his upcoming pastel workshop. Welcome, Otto, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Yeah, everything's pretty good. At least it's not raining as bad as it was a few days ago. So,
oh, that's good.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, get some sunlight. Spring is coming. Oh, it's the best. It's the best when you start feeling spring coming.
Absolutely, and I'm wondering if we're going to get another super bloom with all this rain. I don't know if we get the hills here and especially like in Lancaster are just phenomenal. So yeah, I feel I can get some good reference shots or get my easel out and do a little painting. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah. But yeah, so talking about you though, and reference images so you can get, do you mind telling us a bit about you, who you are, what you do?
Sure. I've mostly been let me backtrack just a little. So I knew that I wanted to do artwork since I was a kid, and eventually there was a lot of detours. But I have been an artist now for about 25 years, and I've worked in a lot of different genres. So I've been a field assistant art director for Disney Imagineering, helping them on projects such as Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, Guardians of the Galaxy. I've done set design. I've done scenic art. I've taught in different mediums, as with illustration. And speaking of illustration, I've done work for film and television. So I've done a little bit of this and that, but now I'm really working on the fine art, and I've got a few little side projects that I'm working on that I can tell you about later. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and the other part that I find awesome is that you're primarily self-taught, right?
Correct. I never had any formal schooling, and I'm jealous because after you telling me that you've been able to take some of these been at these ateliers. So no, I've been primarily self-taught. I was in the military, and as soon as I got out of the military, I was able to attend a school which was not accredited. It was just a phenomenal group of artists who were teaching there. Many of them were working in the business here in LA and in the Hollywood scene, whatever it might be. And so I saved up desperately whatever money I had to attend some of these classes and workshops. And they were typically about your 8-week long classes or your several day workshops. And I learned a lot from it. So I've always been very appreciative of all the artists who have given of their time or given their insight freely, unconditionally. And so I try to do the same now to whoever comes and asks me about several mediums or how can they do this or that. Not that I'm an expert, but I can tell them about my experiences and try to guide them that
Yeah. Well, that's awesome though. And with your detours, I think maybe also it benefited you in the sense of I guess widening your experience because you traveled a lot when you were in the military, right? So
way. So yeah.
you decided, okay, I want to be a painter, but then why did you end up in the military?
All right. Well, uh, there was I wasn't the best student. Let's just say that, and my grades weren't entirely up to par. And so I knew that I did want to go to an art school, but art school is so expensive. And I come from a big family. I come from there's eight of us. There's eight kids. I was number seven, and
Mhm.
it was my dad was working in construction, and even though he did make um, a decent amount of money for at that time, that's 1970s, 80s. You know, to feed eight kids and try to get them into college was a bit difficult. So and also they didn't speak English entirely well enough to, let's say, maybe try to guide me through seeking grants or whatever it might be to be able for me to attend a certain art school. So anyhow, I went to the counselor that we had. I went to a private Catholic school, and I went to the counselor and he looks at my grades and says, "You ever think about going into the military?" And so, I was, I was, I was kind of insulted, but, uh, there was just how I didn't know. It was a dream to be able to think that I was going to be able to get into an art school as much as I wanted to go
Mhm.
into one. So I thought, she mentioned that, it was actually she mentioned that, they have the GI Bill and they can help you, you know, put some money together to attend college later on. Okay, so I took that advice and I did. I went in and joined the military. I was very young. I was 17. I had to have my parents sign the forms for me because I was under 18. I turned 18 in boot camp, and I followed that path. So it was a bit of a detour. Oddly
Mhm.
enough, I when I was in boot camp, they, we're all lined up, and we have to speak in third person, and it was very odd. But either way, the drill instructor says, "Any of you recruits know how to draw," and so this private does, sir. And so anyhow, there was like three of us, and he made us all draw a bulldog, which is the Marine Corps mascot. And so eventually, I won the contest, and I was known as the artist private.
Oh, nice.
Right. So I was the artist private, so I got to design our flag, and what else? It was a few things. Anyhow, there was times when I didn't have to go and do some PT because I was doing the artwork for our battery. But a funny story while I was in boot camp, I remember it was about 3 in the morning, and I'm shaken awake, and drill instructor's about this far away from my face, and like, oh no, what did I do?
Mm.
And we're all in our bunks, and so he says recruit, I need you in my office, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so busted, I have no idea what I did. So, I went to the office there in the barracks, and he says, it's my anniversary, and I need a card. Can you draw me something? And I said,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely. So there it was. It's about 3:30 in the morning,
Oh
and I'm
boy.
drawing an anniversary card for his wife. And
Oh.
the perk of that was that I remember everybody's getting up, they're gonna go do PT at about 4 a.m, and they're all looking at me in the office, and I am on his desk, and they're just looking at me odd, like, what is going on with this guy? And so, yeah, I spent the next 4 hours because I wanted to do it nice and slow, do a real nice job. It was just with just a pencil. And it would look more like a tattoo than anything else because it had the
Oh,
heart, the banner, and the daisies,
oh my God.
And so it was very odd. But yeah, and I got to go eat at the officers' chow hall. Now, the officers' chow hall is very different from the recruit boot camp chow
Mhm.
hall, and it was something else. It was like living in the lap of luxury when you go into this chow hall because they have the Jello spreads, and they have all the good food, right? Where you didn't get the slop that you were getting at
Mhm.
the regular chow hall. So that was a nice little perk. But uh, anyhow, that turned into me illustrating and doing some work for some of the for the Marine Leatherneck, for the Leatherneck magazine. I had started doing some pen and ink drawings, and eventually I served in Desert Storm, where I was doing some sketches for historical reference. So I did get to do some art in the military after all. And
Yeah.
as soon as I got out, I did 6 years both active and reserve. I found the School of Associates in Art, which was in Sherman Oaks, and that's where I started really digging into my talent that I didn't have. So I learned a lot. I did. I learned a lot, but I spent a good majority of the day there. And when I wasn't taking classes, I was trying to help out in the school, whatever it might be, so that I was able to be surrounded by such amazing talent.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd story, but
No, but it's
but
it's
a true one,
so
true one,
great.
a true one.
Yeah. No, it's a great story because, it goes to show that, despite you taking this detour, you still stayed very much true to your identity, as an artist. Like, no, this is what I want. I'm just doing this as a means to an end, and it reminds me of how, you were interviewed, I can't remember what article it was, and you mentioned how it also impacted you when you were stationed in Norway and you saw, the
Absolutely.
northern lights and how that really, you know, impacted you.
Well, it absolutely did. So during my time in the military, and this is during the time of Desert Storm, which you would think, okay, they sent mostly everybody to Iraq.
Yeah.
We were sent to do Operation Battle Griffin, and so it was a training with French forces, Norwegian forces, and we were above the Arctic Circle. And it was I'd never felt cold like I did in Norway, and it was.
Oh, yeah.
But I did get to see. Yeah, my highlight was the fact that I think it was. My first time seeing snowflakes, right? And just gigantic snowflakes. And I was just
Yeah.
like, whoa, this is a snowflake. Uh, but the scenery, and I hadn't experienced silence like I did in Norway. I grew up in the Northeast San Fernando Valley, right next to a freeway and the train tracks, and in a noisy house, a small house with 10 people in it. Oftentimes, much more than that because we had relatives coming over from Mexico. So I don't know that I ever really experienced silence. And so I remember being patrolling up on one of the ridges, and I stop and I look up, and just the beauty of the aurora borealis, how inspiring that was. But for a moment there was no trees rustling, no breeze. It was just absolute silence, and how bizarre that was, but how uh, inspiring and aligning it was at the same time. And so I just that was something to remember. And the people, the Norwegians were so, it's just amazing because we are driving with tanks and these artillery cannons through the backyards, and so I remember they were really welcoming. And I remember there was this one lad who came up, and he would come out. He was maybe like 7, 8 years old, and we're he's coming from the farmhouse, wherever he's coming from, and he's trying to he's trying to tell us that his sister can bake really good pies, and so he wants he wants my cover for a pie. And I said, okay, okay. I think it was lingonberry.
Yeah, that's something they have here a lot, yeah.
Is it the lingonberry? So anyhow, he brought me a lingonberry pie and a few turnovers or whatever. And
Aw.
so sure enough, and so I gave him my cover, but not before he gave me his cover as well. You know, with the well, I don't know what you call that. You know,
Like a
Elmer
little
Fudd wears
earplugs or
those kind
something?
of yeah, with the
Yeah.
earbuds. So I brought that home with me. I brought that home with me. I gave it to my
Aw.
nephew, but I thought that was it was the most adorable thing there, you know. And he's he's coming over to hang out with the military guys and say, hey, do you guys want some pies? He's trying to sell pies and stuff. And
Oh.
but I said, look, I don't have any cash on me, but I'm willing to trade you something. Okay, I'll take the hat for a pie. So I was like, all right. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
so
yeah.
cute.
But
Yeah,
I absolutely love
people are
Norway.
very kind. Yeah, people here are very kind. And definitely, like, the culture here is very welcoming, uh, in a lot of ways, to foreigners. Like, everyone just kinda sees the foreigners like, "Oh, something, new," you know? Although the island that I'm on, it does get a lot of, tourism, so it's a little bit different. But, still, yeah, people are very, very kind here, which is really nice. But yeah, so your experiences, how do you find that they affected, the messages that you like to explore in your work? Do you find that, it kind of opened your world up a little bit?
Absolutely. You know, much of my work, um, at least the themes that I strive for are personal. And
Mm.
if you look at much of my work, it does have a narrative to it. And I think I owe a lot of that to several, well, mostly a couple things. One is Sister Wendy Beckett. Are you familiar with Sister Wendy Beckett?
No.
Uh, She okay. Oh, you have to know Sister Wendy Beckett. She she was a phenomenal art historian, a nun, and
Oh,
she had a show on the BBC back in the it was either maybe it was the early '90s, and I remember being pretty young and and seeing her videos, and she would go to the Norton Simon here in Pasadena, close to me, and she would visit many phenomenal works around the world in Italy and France, and so she would talk about the artists, but also the works themselves. And it was such an amazing insight. And at a time where I was wondering how an artist paints that, how did that artist paint that? How did she create this phenomenal piece of work? Well, for her, it was why did they paint that? And so she gave me that insight as to what was going on in their personal lives. Whether they were losing children to some kind of fever epidemic, whatever it might be, or and there was, you would look at a still life, which I love to paint, and and there was such a deep personal narrative in some of these works because it was a locket that belonged to so and so, and it was just phenomenal, and the way she describes everything. So if you get a chance, you have to see Sister Wendy. You got to see her videos. She's a no holds barred kind of nun, and she was just a treasure. And so yeah, if you haven't seen Sister Wendy, absolutely. So I after seeing her videos, I remember, whoa, what is do I that I want to paint? What is it? What stories do I have to tell? And being a kid that grew up, in Sun Valley, and uh, and so, I started thinking about, you know, all my detours and all this, things that may have happened in my life. So how can I interpret that in my paintings? And so I found a zen in that. I found that because my work can be very time consuming, I felt that I needed to have something that I really was attached to, especially if I'm really spending, 100 hours easy on a painting. And went through my trials and tribulations with mediums and thinking that, oh, maybe this is just too hokey or whatever it is. But when I you know accepted, who I was and what I wanted to say, then it all kind of balanced itself out. So, um, yeah, I just felt that maybe my stories weren't as mundane as I thought maybe they were, and maybe I can tell a story that connects to one person, and even if it doesn't connect to anybody, it was very personal to me, and so it was almost meditative, and so for me, it was painting is healing, and it made me feel really good. I think that's when I feel best is when I'm actually producing. So yeah, hopefully that
Oh,
answered that question.
yeah, no, it did. I really love that painting is healing. And I've experienced painting in that way also. I feel like probably majority of painters probably have experienced that, or people who create, because you're not just a painter, right? You use pastel. So it's like, even through any medium when we create something, it is a very healing thing to, put down a feeling that we've been
Mhm.
carrying inside of ourselves that has been, maybe even burdening us. Because oftentimes I find that, with creative people, we tend to be so full of feeling. We're so sensitive, in the best way possible, of course. But sometimes even our own feelings can become our tormentors. And I feel like, yeah, painting and drawing and just letting it out, can be very healing for sure.
And I think one of the things that stumped me the most was the fact that I was primarily self-taught, always
Right.
doubting what I could create. And so, if you put the time into it, and I said, I just got to put the time into it
Yeah.
and just allow myself to make mistakes, allow myself to grow. I am the artist I am today. And, if I keep working at my craft, honing in, I'll get better. And, and I'll be able to tell my story a little bit better. So it's a draft over draft over draft over draft until finally you become quite good at the vernacular of art.
And your work is gorgeous. So that speaks for itself.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. I think
Yeah.
if you look at my piece, which I did several years, well, yeah, quite a few years ago, maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, there was a piece called "Sweet Serenade,"
Mhm.
and so I invoke a lot of my culture into my paintings as well. And even though I have a German name, I am, como se dice, más mexicano que los frijoles, which is they say, more Mexican than beans. Um, and so I do have a German name, and I'll leave that. Oh, just to let you know, and that when I was in the military, and of course, military men aren't exactly the most
Mm.
kosher, but
Yeah.
they did give me the name Wiener Schnitzel when I was in the.
A heart attack.
I it's awful. I know. Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
no.
So there goes Sergeant Beaner Mitchell. But so yeah, and so I invoke a lot of my I invoke a lot of my culture into it. And so if you see Sweet Serenade, you see um, this little paper mache piece that represents um, death. And what it is, it's a calavera playing um, a guitar. And so, and looking up at this candle, which has, and I grew up Catholic, so you see La Virgen de Guadalupe, which, um, Mary. And so my son was actually born on El Dia de la Virgen de Guadalupe, which is the day of the Virgin of Guadalupe, which is December 12th. But yeah, he was my firstborn, and it was supposed to be a time of joy. Here comes the baby, and so forth. But it turned out to be very hectic. Giving birth was very traumatic for both my wife and my son, and so I was very fortunate that both of them survived that
Yeah.
day. And so it was my homage to life and death. And as the Latino culture, they're very intertwined.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
so you can't, they're it's not that death death is not necessarily a foe. And so in
Mhm.
this painting, you have, uh, death paying homage to life.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that he didn't have to do his job that day, and so he's serenading La Virgen. So, and of course, the candle also represents an ofrenda, which
Mhm.
Latinos is like, you know, please help me out here.
Yeah.
It's a pleading for something, and so. But always with that intent in mind that I will pay it back.
Mhm.
Um, so that piece was very very personal, and so at the very center of the piece, you'll see a sweeper, pan dulce, which, of course, pan dulces. I mean, are you familiar? I mean, I know you're Colombiana, but are you familiar with the
Yeah, yeah,
pan
I've
dulce,
eaten them, they're
the
yummy.
sweetbreads? Yeah.
Yeah.
so, but anyhow, so and if guys, I won't give the whole narrative away, but if you see it, because I do tend to speak about my paintings a little bit, but I want the person who views the artwork to take in the story for themselves, and without me having to, excuse me, to write it all down for them, and just state it, because I think, again, viewing a painting is can be very very personal, and we all have
Mhm.
different senses, and we're sensitive to different things, and so I would like for each viewer who does take note of what I paint to take it in their own way. So
That's wonderful. Oh my gosh, I got goosebumps when you're talking about your painting and, wow. That's,
yeah.
it is fascinating how, especially in Mexican culture. I mean, in Colombia, we also have a very similar view on death where, it's not necessarily the end. Um,
Correct.
but I feel like in Mexico, you guys celebrate death a lot more, like celebrate it in the sense of a natural part of life and also as a way of connecting with your ancestors as well as that you maintain death as a celebration of the past and the present and the future. It's a very beautiful thing. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I'm glad I was taught that, because it's not something that is completely fearful. It is a doorway. It is
Mhm.
a pathway to something else. And so, you know, I I think it helps me appreciate life a lot more, for certain.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
And so and again, when you're young. I was 19 years old, when you're called to serve, you're called to war, and it's just it's an experience that you don't know if you're saying goodbye to your family for the last time, and so it's like I said, it's one of those things where if you can take those experiences and somehow um, guide them into these paintings. Can you tell a better story? And so I think Sister Wendy Beckett helped me kind of really focus in on what it is I want to say with my paintings. So I definitely appreciate her for that. So, and like I said, being self-taught is has its own obstacles, of course. So
Yeah.
and I still, I mean, to this day, I'm a sponge, and I can't get enough now. But that being said, of course, with social media, you can get sucked up into seeing what everybody else is doing, and then you find yourself losing your voice. So it's one of those things where I have to remind myself, you do what you do, and because it's very tempting to get caught up in what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also stay off social media for that reason. Like I'll pop in, I'll support my
Yeah,
friends, like their posts, comment, because I love seeing how well my friends are doing, and then I'm out. I'm out because oh, I don't want it to taint my desires and my own work. It's so easy to
absolutely. Yeah,
get, pulled off course um when, you're especially when you're in, like, a vulnerable state, because I feel like most artists, when we're in, like, that state of, like, thinking and ideation, and maybe we have an idea for a new painting, it's so easy to get pulled off course if you see something impactful, right? But that's the other funny thing, you look at someone else's painting, and maybe it's complete, and it's, like, breathtaking, you're like, "Oh, god damn it. What's
yeah,
the point?"
yeah.
Right?
It's
But
like,
then
oh. All
Ugh,
right.
it's like,
I'm pretty.
why do I even bother, right? But at the same time, it's still good to remind yourself, like, yeah, it's still you should bother because that person's doing their thing, you do your own thing, and it'll be fine. Your work is still gonna be
Absolutely.
beautiful. It's just
Absolutely.
so much of it is don't get pulled away. Don't like just stay
Yeah.
centered. Like, yeah, get inspired, but
Absolutely.
inspired, not like destroyed.
Exactly, exactly, and
Yeah.
it gets to a point where you feel like, okay, I'm doing this way too much. I'm beating myself up because of what somebody else is doing. And so again, stay focused. Stay mindful. Stay present in what you are doing, and you'll have a better day if you do that. So,
Oh, for sure.
I tend to have a pretty good regimen when it comes to my daily routine. And so I take my boys to school, and usually in the morning I'll check some emails, and then got to get breakfast and get them ready to go to school. And then so I have a good amount of time to get a lot of my work done. So I know that that time is absolutely dedicated for me to get on the easel, because 6 hours for me is 6-7 hours for me is not a long time
Yeah.
to put at the easel. I feel like my paintings sometimes hardly move, especially if I'm working with pastel,
Mhm.
because even though it's not like oil medium where you have to wait certain things to dry. Well, the thing with pastels is that you have to think a little bit like a chess player, in the sense that that whatever you're going to put on top of the previous layer is going to somehow affect it, right?
Right.
In that it's going to move around or blend, or depending on how much pressure you're putting on there. So it I mean, but the beauty of pastel is that once it's done, it's there's really aren't going to be any changes to it. I mean, you can have a painting that's 500 years old and looks exactly like the day it was painted. Granted
Mhm.
that it wasn't in sunlight or it wasn't in humidity, but and yes, it has to be behind glass, but it just feels very tactile to be able to
Yeah.
work with pastel. And so again, it's just having a good routine is helpful in that. Okay, I'm not going to get on social media during this time, because this is time dedicated for my craft.
And do you find that you got that discipline from the military?
Probably, yeah. I still eat like a Marine, right? You ever see a Marine eat?
Oh, wow.
We eat way too fast. We
Well, because you
just
probably have 5 minutes, right?
yeah. Yeah. Well, and going back to Norway, great, great. So they would come with the trucks, and they would bring these you know big thermoses or whatever you want to call them, and they would. I'm not kidding you. We would time how fast it would take for our food to get solid cold, and it was about a minute. They would serve it on your plate, and you try to describe the stew, and but within a minute, it was just like frozen. It was just unbelievable how fast this thing got cold, because of the below zero temperatures there, and especially if you had wind chill factor or whatever it might be. It was just incredible. But yeah, we ate way too fast, and so but the discipline, yeah, it does help. It did help, but also I knew that from experience, if you don't set yourself up with a plan, that you're going to get sidetracked way too easily. And so it's been good for me to be able to have this time dedicated for my craft. Now, speaking of detours, there were times when I was working for as a field assistant art director to Imagineers, and those were some long days. You'd have to get up at 3:30 in the morning. I drive to the park, and then I have to go through security check, and it takes a while to get into the park where you need to go to, and then you would spend a good 8 to 16 hours a day working on the project, depending on how many hours they needed you. And so coming back in traffic would take you know I think driving daily was like 3 hours easily in traffic, and so it would just wear away at you. And as fun as it was working on Guardians of the Galaxy, or um, Galaxy's Edge, it was just after a year or two of that, it was just, oh my gosh, it was nice to get
Mm.
back to the easel, and it couldn't be more. I mean, yes, I got to work on props and certain things like for the Spider-Man ride, which is great. You got to work on some props, but like for Galaxy's Edge, we're painting with. I'm not kidding you. We're painting like with hoses, and so we've
Mm.
working on scaffolds, and we're a good 100 feet or more up in the air, depending on what we're doing. Or we're working on boom lifts, and it feels more like a construction job because they're in full gear,
Mhm.
and so you're pouring paint and you're creating these rust stains, and it's just very, very aerobic. uh it's very tasking on the body to be working on these things. It was an experience. And so and so when you get into the studio, and here you are, working these little sections at a time. So but like I said, it's nice to experience all of that, to be able to go from 8-inch brushes to going to these little pastel pencils, or paintbrushes,
Yeah,
doing tiny
oh my
little
gosh,
hairs or textures. So yeah. Sorry,
that's
you know what? I
insane.
went on a rant. I forgot what
No,
your question was.
no, you were just responding to a comment I made, so you're good. I think it's fascinating to hear that because I absolutely love going to Disney World. Well, I mean, I haven't been to Disneyland, but I've been to Disney World and the Galaxy's Edge there, and I think it's so so cool. I love how immersive it is, especially if you're a Star Wars fan. So I wow, imagining like like meeting you, it's like wow. Imagine the group of people who had to put all this together, right? Because
Yeah,
it takes a whole team. And it takes forever. I remember when they started it, they blocked off, a section of the park and no one could go through there, or they had to
yeah.
like reroute everyone. And then when they opened it, it's like, wow, this is amazing. Like, and I commend you. I commend you because again, working for the mouse is not easy. As you mentioned, it is a lot of hours. I've met a lot of people who haven't had the best experiences working for the mouse, as they say.
No,
But yeah.
it could be tight. It could be tight in the sense
Mhm.
where there's a lot of people working all at the same time
Yeah.
to meet the deadlines, and it can be, yeah, it can be crazy. I mean, we're painting, and maybe you've got some guy up on the scaffolding above you welding, and so you've got all these sparks flying down, and but like I said, it's definitely got its ups and downs in with these projects, but to see
Yeah.
it all come together is really
Yeah.
neat. To be able to go back to the park, and I did actually get to work at Disney World a little bit. I got to do work on at the Epcot Center. I was able to work on the big. Did you get to see the big statue of the Fiti at the new Moana right next to in Epcot? Yeah, I
I
got to
haven't
I
been
got to
there
work on
since
that.
then.
I got to
Oh,
work
that's
on
so
that.
cool.
Let's see, not the last summer, the summer before that, and so it was pretty. It was really neat experience, and so I was able to work on a lot of the foliage that went to Tokyo as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so that was my first time working in Florida, um,
Mm.
for on a Disney project. But most of my projects were done here. But and each park again differs, right? From
Yeah.
you like the Guardians of the Galaxy. If you ever get to ride the Guardians of the Galaxy here in LA, you're going to see a difference. It's going to be quite a bit different. So yeah,
I mean, yeah,
it's just
I personally am a fan of the Tower of Terror, and I would not want them to change the one in Disney World because I'm a huge fan of the Twilight Zone. So I would
oh
be very sad.
good,
I would be very sad if they
yeah,
changed it. Fingers crossed that they don't.
yeah,
You guys can have it in Disneyland and we'll keep the OG uh at Disney World.
yeah. I
Yeah.
know, it was so sad to see when you had some just phenomenal Art Deco style stuff that came out of
Oh,
that
it's amazing.
hotel. It
It's
was just
amazing.
gorgeous, and so
Mhm.
uh, I don't know what they do. Amazing. Do they end up? I guess maybe they end up selling some of that stuff, or do they
They
archive it?
might
I
put it
don't
in
know. Do they
storage.
repurpose it? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll probably
So,
use it
but
for
it was
like
really
some
neat.
sort of museum thing, they usually put
Yeah.
all that stuff in storage. But yeah, I
Yeah.
hope they don't change the one at Disney World because it's my favorite ride. I was that weird kid who was like, when it was like a 5-minute wait, I would go up and down, up and down, up and down. Like I would just ride it over and over. Uh, because I just love that
That's
feeling
pretty
of
awesome.
falling. But besides that's like wow, we're off track. But
I know, I know. We're talking rides.
but it's great. It's great. But back to, your career, right? You started out as an illustrator, right? Just as a career, working as an
Correct.
illustrator. And now you're a full-time artist, right? And also a
Correct.
contractor. What was that shift like for you? Was it like really easy for you to, jump out of that career and into like your, okay, I'm just gonna be full-time artist, or how do you manage
You,
that?
it was actually pretty neat to jump from, let's say, doing illustration, and I gotta, well, let me backtrack just a little bit, because in all sincerity, maybe it wasn't that difficult, because when I was in doing some of my time as reserve in the military, I remember I teamed up with a group called East Coast Streetscapers. And East Coast Streetscapers were actually had this building like in Skid Row, and so it was kind of risky driving through this area where there's bonfires in the street, and it was my first time experiencing that. And we would go into the warehouse, and I at the time, what you have, we had the, oh, I'm getting a thumbs up here. I had a I think I did
You're good.
that. but but you had the white pages, and so I'm looking through the white pages, I'm looking for any art crew or anything that I might be able to apprentice with, because again, I didn't have the means for art school. So Wayne Healy was one of the heads of East Coast Streetscapers, and they were doing phenomenal murals for East LA. They were currently working on a project for the World Cup back in 1994, and so I was able to apprentice with them, and so I was able to work on these big, murals, these large scale murals. So that kind of segued into when I started working for Disney as scenic art, which was, I believe, like 2010 when I started doing that. So again, that was, a span of, a good 15 years from, painting murals with those streetscapers to the time I was starting to do mural work and scenic art for Disney. But jumping around from one to one didn't feel as unnatural. And I say that because I just was fortunate enough to have people who guided me really well to be able to switch over. Some things lended, into other parts. Like for instance, the mural making into the scenic art. Um, some of the illustrations or the sketches that I was doing for maybe character design or for film and television were transcending over into different parts of my artwork as well. And so being able to um, jump around, you were able to learn a lot of new techniques, new mediums, which I was incorporating into other parts. For instance, my artwork, I'm kind of a bit of a mad scientist when it comes to um, my methods, and so here behind me you see an airbrush, and sometimes I'm airbrushing watercolor, or I'm throwing alcohol at my painting, whatever it might be. Um, and so I'm just I'm just working with these different mediums, and experimenting all the time to see how far I can push some of these things. And so in that aspect, it's fun. But yeah, you know what? I don't think it was ever really kind of strange going from one to the other, because I just had really good guidance. I had people who really were willing to help me become better and become proficient at that certain genre.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm sure, there's a lot of crossover, as you say. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's faso.com/podcast. And I
Yeah,
actually find that people who have studied illustration before painting, they tend to have a bit of an advantage, in my opinion. I know it's like a little bit funny to say that, but there's an advantage in the sense that with illustration, there's more of an emphasis on the symbolic, like sort of nature of representing something instead of the literal copying of something, which tends to happen today with a lot of painting,
right.
especially in this photographic world. So there's a bit of a sense of like you guys like in illustration, there's an understanding of the essence of something versus oh yeah, we're just gonna like paint this person exactly as they are. So there's like a nice crossover there with the two. It's actually I feel like people who have studied painting after, like not after, but people who have studied painting and then afterward have taken illustration, I feel like that also helps. I feel like they feed each other beautifully.
Well, I got regarding illustration, I got to say this. You are a taxi driver. You got to take them where they want to go. You got to take the client
Oh
whoever it
yeah,
might be, and
yes.
so you've got to do that efficiently. And so that is a good that's training in that manner is excellent, I think, for an artist because
Mhm,
you're under a certain deadline pressure, right? So you've got to get the composition right, you got to get the design right, you got to get the likeness right, you got to get so many things done fairly quickly,
yeah.
which is almost kind of opposite of the way I normally work. But that was a good training ground because
Mhm,
it helps you get the narrative across fairly quickly. You've
yeah,
got to make it read. You've got to be able to um, speak the language of a narrative. And so when you look at people like Norman Rockwell or Dean Cornwell, and you look at some of these phenomenal illustrators who then had flourishing careers as artists. Look at the training ground. I mean, they were
yeah,
proficient in mediums and working fairly quickly, and so they were great designers, and you can learn a lot from those artists who, again, started their careers as illustrators. Some of them did remain as illustrators.
mhm,
When you look at, I hope I'm not saying his name incorrectly, but Landecker,
mhm,
he was just one of the what I think maybe at the time he was the best paid artist out there
yeah,
when it came to illustration. So you know, I kind of got out of illustration because it was becoming a bit of a thankless job. It
mhm,
was the deadlines were becoming way too hectic. I was losing all my weekends. I've got two young boys that
yeah,
I felt I needed to devote more time to, especially like when I was working these long hours, these long days at Disney or these scenic art jobs. So I find that this is much more appealing to me at this point in my life to be able to be there for them and to having this regimen to be able to say, okay, this time is for me to paint, and the rest is, I've got to work with, with um, I've got to be able to do, work around the house and help my
yeah,
boys out with their homework, whatever else. And that is it's just so much more appealing because I remember, working so many years on these projects, and I'd come home and they're already asleep, and so I leave before they wake up, and so maybe you got to see them on the weekend. It's like, oh my god, you grew like 3 inches.
Oh,
So, you know,
yeah.
so this is nice. This is really nice that
Yeah.
I can spend a lot more time with my boys, and you know, I'm giving them art classes because something that I never had, you know. So I, you know, they're wonderful at music. I mean, they love. I mean, they're great at you know, they're playing piano and cello and stuff. But um, the art, they've always, you know, they just kind of see me do it, and then they really dig into it, and they just draw all the time. And I just wish, you know, I had somebody who could teach me when I was 8 years old or 10 years old. I think
Yeah.
there was no art in my house. I think the only artwork that I had, and maybe something you're familiar with, is that we had a calendar from the barber shop, or maybe it was a meat market, and it had a painting of Elguera, right? So, you know, if you're familiar with Elguera's work, it was these mighty Aztec warriors with these Aztec royalty, or maybe you know, these Aztec princesses,
Yeah.
maybe, or you know, I don't know, but it was just, I mean, and his work was just gorgeous, you know. And so we would have a, you know, a calendar hung up, and I would just remember seeing his work, and so that's about the only artwork we had in the house. You know, it just because my folks didn't know the art world, they didn't know, they weren't very familiar. We never went to an art museum, and so, you know, again, it was about my time in high school when I finally had an art class with, you know, Mrs. Main, and she was just, it was the one class I was like good at. Okay, you know, I just really loved going to that class, and so she was just really really supportive, and so I still talk to her to this day, and just thank her for, because I was horrible at everything else, and I just thank her to this day for helping me out and keeping me motivated. And she, you know, she gave us pretty decent, challenging, you know, exercises. You know, to you know, I remember, you know, like we'd have to, you know, she'd give us a picture from a magazine, and in this case, maybe it was a BMW, and I had to draw the other half, right? On the, did you ever do that?
Oh,
Where
no.
you like you slice an object in half, and then you have to replicate the other side, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah, and it was pretty good exercise. So I, you
Oh.
know, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the class so much, and so I think that's what really kept me going and saying, okay, yeah, when I definitely want to be an artist. Definitely want to be an artist. And so, you
I
know,
love that.
so yeah, so, and here I am,
Yeah.
you know, in my
Yeah.
early
No,
50s and stuff, still going.
it's awesome because you're enriching your kids' lives as well. And I love that, I'm also what I love about this career as well is like the part where you actually have time to be with the people you love, right? Like
Yeah.
you can make time for that. As long as obviously you're working on your stuff and you're getting the money coming in from that. Um it gives you a lot of freedom in terms of, spending that time. And I think that's really awesome. Um so that's really great, man. Oh, when I was a little kid, I wish I'd also had someone, to hold my hand and show me exactly how things are. Um, but yeah, I love that. Oh wow. But also, I wanted to know, right? Because when you were studying at this school, right?
Yeah.
Um, you were probably, I'm guessing, maybe you had a day job or something, right? While you were going to these schools.
I had every kind of
What
job.
I can imagine, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I'll tell you
Um,
another story. I'll tell you.
but
So I'm
so
sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. I just wanna, finish the question. What was it like for you to, like, once you finished school, right? Were you able to jump right into a career in illustration, or did it take, like, some time?
You know, it wasn't, I never finished school, to be honest with you. It was just one of those, you know, things where you paid for a class, and, you know,
Mhm.
and hopefully you had enough money to take the next one, you know. So it was,
Got it. Yeah.
I, during that time when I was there, I was very fortunate to meet Mike Buckus, who was the one who took me under his wing at that time, and it was like 1996 maybe. I got out of the military in 1995, and so around 96, 97, uh, you know, I remember Mike had a studio uh, upstairs in this building, and he was just phenomenal. I mean, he has worked on thousands of projects, and so he and I hit it off, and he had mentioned that I had a pretty good sense for composition, and so he says, "Do you want to help me out on this one gig?" And I think it was for Superman at that time, the Superman Returns. And so I said, sure. And so I started helping him out. I was taking, actually, he was teaching there, and I was taking his classes, and I loved taking his classes on illustration, and just, he had so many techniques, using acrylics or oils, and using different tools like the airbrush, whatever it might be. So you had some phenomenal artists and illustrators there. Well, I don't think it was until about 2003 where he threw me in the deep end, and he says, "Here, you're going to go to this one company, and you're going to just take on what you got." I'm like, "Well, I don't have much. I mean, I haven't really done any jobs, other than what I've helped you on. Just go try to get the work." So I went, and it was a pretty big company. I don't know if they still exist, but they were working at that time on Polar Express. And so, yeah, with Tom Hanks, it was Robert Zemeckis' film, right? Mm-hmm. And so they gave me the job. They said, "We need you to do some work for standees, and we need you to do some concept work. We need you to do this stuff." And I was like, "Oh my God," I was not ready for it. Now, here's the funny thing. Mike and I he was doing it for another company. So we're kind of competing against each other and stuff. But of course, Mike was always a great sport, and he helped me immensely with this work. And so it was actually my first real venture into film, conceptual work for film, and it worked out. It worked out. It worked out for me, and then I started getting more and more work, and so there I was doing illustrations, and so. And we were working directly with Robert Zemeckis, so that was a real joy. I do recall, I think maybe my first illustration job was maybe when I was 17, but that came because my sister was working for Dino De Laurentiis, and they were doing a movie with Edward James Olmos and Willem Dafoe, which was called Triumph of the Spirit. And it was, I think it was about the life of a boxer during World War II. And I guess we're having issues with the title. And she says, "Hey, are you willing to try to come up with a title for illustration for this movie?" And I worked on it for a few days, and they accepted it. So yeah, it was my first paid gig as an illustrator. They actually ran with it. So it was just a title, and it had the barbed wire going through the font, mm-hmm. and it had the boxing gloves on the side, and they actually used it for the title. So they refined it, did their thing, and so yeah, they used it. So it was pretty. I was like, oh my God! At that time, I think I got like $200 or $300, for the sketch, right? I was 17. Yeah, that's pretty good. It was pretty good. Yeah. Well, for me, right? Yeah. And so, but I did everything I could to try to come up with money so that I can learn. That included selling oranges at the park when I was I did. And I was a kid. I was a little kid. And I remember my dad would take me to this park because his buddy was selling oranges and stuff, the bag. And they were $1 bag at the time. And so he said, "Hey, we'll give you $0.25 for each bag that you sell." So I sell a bag, and then I take that $0.25 and I go get a sidewalk sundae, which I'd run after the ice cream man. And when I was finally sick of sidewalk sundaes, I started saving it up, and then I would start getting art supplies or crayons, markers, whatever it might be. Man, that started really early on. But I became clever in that I would always go to the kissing couples, and I'd stand there, even after they bought a bag, so they can take the other one. And so, so you'd see all the couples with 2 bags of oranges.
That's awesome. But
and then I would take whatever side jobs. I was collecting aluminum cans. I even became I even became a psychic friend. So
nice.
Oh my God, it sounds so weird saying that. I was a psychic friend. And so that was an odd job. And so it was just, I was just taking the oddest jobs, just trying to make money for my craft. And so, you know what, when I think about it, I started airbrushing shirts. I was working at at art fairs. And so I was just going mad, painting, easily 50 shirts a day until your wrist was just raw, And I started painting billboards for Tower Records. Do you remember Tower Records? Man, you're too way too young for that. But it was on Sunset Strip, and they would, you would paint these big album covers on these billboards, and you would, and then there was another company I worked for, Art Attack, and I was
You worked
painting
for Art Attack. Hold
Art
up.
Attack.
That's
Yes,
my favorite
I worked
show
for
as a kid.
Art Attack.
Art Attack. I loved it.
So I was just painting a bunch of stuff, and just all these odd jobs. And so yeah, I learned, if I learned anything, it was tenacity. Because if nobody was going to hand it to me, I mean, I was very fortunate to have people like Mike Buckus and Steve Bray, who actually put me to work doing painting jackets on Sunset. There was a store called Bray's Rock and Art. It was right between the Whiskey and the Roxy, and I remember painting jackets there. And Guns N' Roses shot a video, and they would walk in and they'd say, "Oh, who painted these?" And so all of us, we're proud of our work. We're like, "Oh, we got to meet quite a few celebrities." I actually was able to paint a jacket for Keanu Reeves. We had breakfast together, and I painted a dragon for Keanu Reeves on a jacket. So Louis Anderson would come by too, and so it was a neat experience. Like I said, if anything, I knew in my gut that I wanted to paint, and that's what I want to do. And so, and many detours as I had, I'm glad that I was stubborn enough to stick to wanting to learn and getting. I need. Yeah, I mean, I had to pay my bills. I had to try to come up with money for those classes. So it's not cheap. It's a small fortune learning, right?
It is.
So
yes. Oh, yes. But it ends up being worth it.
absolutely.
And also all the experiences, of working in all these places and trying your hardest. Yeah, I feel like that really enriches your work as well because you're putting your work is like the culmination of all of your life, right? So it's even
Yeah.
more interesting that you have all of these crazy anecdotes and like all of these crazy experiences, and it's all in the work, which is wow. That's fascinating. You could totally write like a biography, like an autobiography, and it would be so fascinating to read it. Because
Well,
it's so cool. Yeah.
it's more
Um,
comedic than anything else. It's pretty funny, but
oh,
you gotta laugh.
I would read it. I'd be laughing the whole time, but I'd read it. Because you have a way of explaining things it's very captivating. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Um, you're welcome. But speaking of also online, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you personally like to put your work out there to be seen? Like what online or offline channels do you use?
Okay. Well, I got to be honest. I mean, I don't use Facebook as much as some artists do, and
Mhm.
I've been mostly, if I use social media, it's Instagram and that's pretty much about it. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're going about it all wrong." I get it. I get it. But I'm not the real big social media kind of guy, and I like to devote much of my time creating personal relationships, face to face relationships.
Right.
I have found that by being able to do be in front of people, doing art shows, or even like when I was telling you, doing like the whole t-shirt thing or the jackets, just being able to have those conversations face to face. I think those have been my um, have been well my moments where I realized that this is really how you make a living, for me anyway, right? Where you go out, you meet people, you let them see your art, you get them, have them talk to you and tell them about your experiences, tell them about your uh, narration, tell them about your paintings, right? And you get to create a really great relationship with these potential collectors, which many of them have become collectors. And so, in that sense, yes, I'm very grateful that I like to get out there and be seen. And so I understand there are people who make a great living at just doing social media, and that isn't me just yet. So I feel like at this point in time, I enjoy still just the old fashioned one on one.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think it's very undervalued. I know that I think, personally, a lot of artists, we struggle, in my opinion, some of us might struggle a bit with talking to people, especially about our own work. But I
Yeah,
think it is, in the end, when you gain that ability to do that and you go out and maybe you're part of like some sort of, like you said, like an art show, or you're part of a group of people, like a painting society of some sort, and you do
right.
like a group show, it is such a great opportunity to, talk to people and connect with people. I understand that social media is, it's useful for connecting with people, but I feel like it's still a very shallow way of connecting with people because it's very surface level. It's almost like a fantasy. But when you meet someone, face to face, or even just through Zoom, like we're doing now,
Yeah,
you get a different feel of that person because they're,
right.
expressing themselves instead of just like little writing on a phone screen. So I'm with you. I think there's value to face to face human
Yeah,
connection, there's something there. Yeah.
and I prefer those types of conversations. Where
Mhm.
because you're right. When you're just typing, you don't get the full right, the full
Mhm.
gist of who this person might be, and um, I just really enjoy being able to connect with people in that way, especially because I spend so many hours in my studio
Yes.
that when I get that opportunity to finally go out, you know, and
Yes.
so I sometimes like I always tease, well, I always tease my wife, and it's like it's like when are you gonna slide another stick under the door, but because I'm in my I'm in my dungeon. I'm in my cell.
Uh-huh.
And so I think it. I have to put that time in, but
Mhm.
for the same reason, the same time I spend it in my studio, I need to be out there as well and making those connections. And maybe I'm not on social media because I don't know how to use it as effectively just yet, but I would say I do know some artists who succeed in that, but they also mention that it does eat up a lot of time. It does eat up a lot of time to be able to, put their videos together, or um, whatever it might be. But I, I'm not I'm not creating paintings every few hours. That's not me, and so
Yeah.
I just feel like I got to put the time on the easel.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another great point. There is a lot more to just posting on social media. And personally, the algorithm is pretty messed up right now, so you're good. You're not missing out. Like, there's so many artists right now who are complaining about not getting enough reach anymore.
Yeah,
That's
I know. I post something. It's like, oh, 3 people saw it. I'm like, all right.
yeah, I mean, but the algorithm's been like pretty bad to the point where like people who are getting maybe like 1,000 views or something are getting maybe 200. So there's some crazy stuff happening
Huh.
there, and they change it every month, and it drives
Yeah.
everyone bananas. So you're not necessarily missing out much. So you're
Well,
you're
that's good.
good.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good. I mean, it's still worth it because more eyes on your work is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a balance. You can't I feel like it's a mistake to overly rely on only one social media too. It's good to spread out a bit,
Yeah.
but again, that takes work. It takes time.
It does. It
Uh,
does. And that's why I'm thankful for newsletters. Where I'm able to get this newsletter
yes,
and let them know, hey,
glad
this
you
is
brought
what
that
I've
up.
been doing.
Mhm.
And so that's been very helpful.
Yes, for sure. For sure. The newsletter is like number one. Like I feel like it's so great when an artist brings it up because it's so true. Like if someone has taken the time to sign up for a newsletter, that's worth a million times more than like a follower on social media because
It-
it's so easy to just follow someone, but it takes effort to go to someone's website and like type in your email and then put the accept. Like, yes, I do wanna get, like, I'm a real person,
Yeah.
I wanna get the newsletter from this person. Like, it takes a little more effort, and it goes to show that those people really do wanna hear from you, so yes.
And one of
Newsletters.
the things too is I think what's people maybe have lost the value of sending a postcard, sending a letter to
Yes.
people, and that helps out immensely. Years ago, I gave classes to um, Tom Kinney. Tom Kinney is the voice of SpongeBob, and I gave art classes to his son and his daughter. And to this day, he still makes a donation in my name um, to, I think it's, I'm if I remember quite well. I think it's for cancer research. I'm trying to remember what it is, but either way, I just think it's so nice to be able to get every year get a postcard, a Christmas card from them, and it's like wow, okay, I touched somebody in that sense, where I was able to make a little bit of a difference. Uh, I think postcards and sending so a message in the mail, old school, is still very valuable. It's helped me anyway, and I I I I've been again I keep using that word fortunate because yeah I've been very fortunate to have those connections. So and but you got to work from and I think if you're genuine in what in your craft, if you're trying to be very genuine in the communication that you're trying to um, well with the message you're trying to convey is that yes this is my artwork and this is what I'm trying to say and this is what I'm trying to do. You strike up a conversation and sometimes it turns into you know what, I really love that piece, I want to take it with me. So
Yeah.
it's again it takes some time, takes some doing, and I feel like again, if just going back to this whole social media and what it is that seems to be working for me is again the connections that I make through newsletters and postcards and driving somewhere to see somebody and just having lunch or whatever it might be. Just just talk about something other than just art. Yeah,
Yes. Oh, the human connection and the
yeah,
human, the tactile part. I feel, with social media, it's like you're just like this on a phone screen, right?
yeah,
You don't get to hold something. You don't get to breathe the same air as someone else. So it's like,
yeah.
yeah, dude. Oh my God. I actually, speaking of postcards, I just got a postcard from one of my best friends that she sent and I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting it. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, this is so
That,
cool.
so is that kind of weird for you? Is that like to get something like that in the mail, or
No,
is it a
I was so
no?
excited. Yeah, because she sent it
Yeah.
from the Canaries, because that's where she's from.
Oh yeah, the
So,
Canaries.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like it's really
Yeah.
nice, unexpected, and, I feel like I'm hoping today, with the I feel like a lot of people are rebelling a bit against the always online culture that we're in now, always available
Hmm.
culture that we're in now. That, I feel like so many people, especially, people from my generation, are definitely also turning back to the old way of living, the playing outside all day, riding your bikes all day, and the sending a postcard or sending a letter. Because there's just something in it. There's something about the slow
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
after living years and years of crazy deadlines and working
Mhm.
long, long days, it is nice just to slow down a bit
Yeah.
and and get to have these conversations. So that's
Exactly.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. Yes. Um, by the way, do you have any final advice for maybe someone who's looking to become an artist and maybe they want to do it as their career? Do you have any advice?
I would say, I mean, from my experience, be tenacious. Just, but be patient because as you can overwork yourself, and you have to make sense of it. What is your goal? Have a plan. I would say I had my short-term goals. I had my long-term goals. I had some that were very unrealistic. So just be mindful of that. That there are certain things you may not get to um, as soon as you think. And so the thing is just to be mindful of that. That as long as you're working, you're working for a goal, have those goals in mind. Don't stop learning. Always, but I think more than anything, allow yourself to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, and so not everything has to be a piece that has to go out to the world. Some pieces can remain unseen. And regarding becoming a working artist, well, like my friend Mike says, you got to put the mileage in. You've got to put the hours into it. You've got to really address your weaknesses and strengthen what it is you truly love to do. And you have to paint what you love. You have to do what you love. If you don't, it's not going to matter to you as much, and maybe you're trying to do what everybody else is doing, and then you get fed up, you get frustrated, and it makes you less motivated to keep painting. If you can create some kind of regimen, some kind of routine that helps you get to those goals, then do that, because that's what helped me out. I know that is definitely what helped me out, is dedicating your time, your day to certain things. And you have to be adamant about it. You have to, don't get sidetracked by the phone. Don't get sidetracked by the TV. Really stick to it. And you're going to see yourself in a matter of a few weeks how much you have progressed and how much you've gotten accomplished. Write it down if you have to. Old school, just write it down or put the reminder on your phone that you've got to do this, And if you don't get it done, it's not the end of the world. Just know that there are certain things you're going to get done a lot sooner than you think, and some things you're not. And so, but always with the goal in mind that you want to become a better artist and hopefully a better person, because we could definitely use better people, better artists. Just good natured artists in the world. So, absolutely.
Beautiful. Very well said. I love that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any upcoming shows, exhibitions, or anything you'd like to promote?
Well, I've got, let me see, I do have a workshop coming up at Destination Art, and that's in Torrance, California. It's on April 5th and 6th. It's a 2-day workshop. We're going to be working with pastel, different textures, creating different textures. So we're going to hone in on textures. And so you can go to destinationart.com or .org, I believe. Either way, I'm going to be posting it on my website soon. If you want to go to my website, it's sturckestudio.com. So that's STURCKE studio.com. You can also go to my Instagram, and that's whatever it is, Instagram / whatever, Sturcke Studio. So same thing, Sturcke Studio, STURCKE. Can't even spell my own name. Sturcke Studio, and so you'll get to see some of the stuff I'm doing. It's not always fine art. You'll see some of my illustration, and you'll get to see the board game that I'm working on right now, because Mike and I have illustrated plenty of board games for Monopoly, for Clue, and we even did a 75th anniversary Wizard of Oz pop-up Monopoly game. So we're working on our own. It's called Mad Monster Bash. It's a family game. You can play from ages 8 to immortal, and so it's a zany game, and we hope to have it out this year. But if you want to see more of that kind of artwork, and how we're creating that, we also have our Instagram, which is madmonsterbash.com. No, yeah, I don't know. For Instagram, it's just Mad Monster Bash. So anyhow, yeah. So that's pretty much about it. So I've got the workshop, but no shows right now other than the Pastel Society of Southern California, which is a group society show. I was the president for a couple of years of the Pastel Society of Southern California, and then I'll post it out on my website as well, because the exact dates they're not coming to me right now, so I apologize. But yeah.
Awesome. Wow, so much going on. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you so much for being a guest on the show. This has been
thank you for inviting.
Awesome chat. Of course. Yeah. This was a happy,
I hope I get to see
chat.
you. Yeah. I hope I get to see you in Norway, because I told my boys I really want to take them up to Norway to see what I saw,
Oh,
and of course, you can go to Alaska and stuff, but yeah, Norway was just absolutely amazing. So I hope they get to see that. So
yeah. Well, if you're ever in the vicinity, let me know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And we were mentioning that you weren't too far away from where I was stationed. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely
Well,
as well.
yes, we'll stay in touch.
Okay, thank you.